It's a big year for Keon Coleman, but he's confident and not making any excuses.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, welcome in. Buffalo Bills mandatory minicamp continued on Wednesday. The Bills practicing at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time, and they're scheduled to practice again on Thursday to wrap up the offseason program ahead of training camp, which is scheduled to begin in late July. We don't have the dates yet on that. We'll get that very, very soon. But the Bills getting ready. And we have some nuggets coming out of one Bills drive, as the session on Wednesday was open to the media. And so we've got some different reports out there. But the thing that really stood out to me from following along with the different reports and watching the press conferences, it was Keon Coleman. And Keon Coleman met with the media after practice, and he had some pretty straightforward comments. And the one that really stood out to me was him talking about what he's been working on and how he has self-assessed his rookie season. And when talking about the components of his game that he's trying to improve upon, he mentioned specifically speed, technique, lifting weights, and putting mass back on, which are pretty good things for any professional athlete to work on year over year. But when he started to talk about what self-assessment looked like for him and what he saw, he was very, very candid. Keon Coleman said, quote, "That expletive is trash. You got to be better." And then he went on to list all these very specific details about how he can be better, whether it's making a block down the field, creating more space, catching a pass, getting on top of a DB differently. He was pretty straightforward and honest about some things, and I appreciated it. I thought he came across as very confident, very honest, very motivated, and I think that's important. He came across as very self-aware. I think one of the most important traits any human being can have is self-awareness, and it seems like Keon Coleman has a good bit of that. And I really loved when he was asked a follow-up question about, listening to Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott talk about you this offseason. There's been a lot of commentary about how young you are. And Keon straight up said, I don't care that I'm young. It's either good or it's bad. And I love that. It felt like a guy that had a lot of confidence, a lot of self-awareness, and obviously a big year for Keon Coleman, as his role could really skyrocket. It could be similar to last year. Obviously, a big investment with him being the top pick for the Bills in that 2024 draft. A player that Josh Allen has come out and said that, he preferred and wanted in that draft class. And you think about where this offense can go, and Keon Coleman's an important part of it. And I think so much structurally of how the Bills want to play offense is rooted in his role as an X-receiver. And whether it's as a volume target or not, his ability to play on the outside and win leverage battles and kind of challenge defenses to maybe play one-on-one with him. And if they do, for him to be able to make them pay, or if he's really emerged as this physical presence on the boundary, maybe start to cheat over a safety that way. But the bottom line is his ability to win on the perimeter is important for what it means for the middle of the field. The best passes in the NFL, the most prolific passes, the highest EPA in terms of where targeted routes matter the most, it's the middle of the field. And the Bills' best pass catchers are middle of the field guys in Khalil Shakir, in Dalton Kincaid. And I think the Bills want to be able to attack that portion of the field. And a big part of that is what a guy like Keon Coleman can offer on the perimeter. And so I'm excited for what I'm hearing from Keon Coleman. Seems like there's been some good reviews on how he's performing out there. But obviously it's got to come together, and it'll be a big opportunity for him in addition to several other wide receivers that we'll talk about here in just a little bit. Now, as it relates to participation, that's always something I'm quite curious in when it comes to the Bills and practicing. Sounds like all the guys that missed the Tuesday practice missed again on Wednesday, but there are some new additions. So let me remind you of who missed and continued to miss. That's safeties Cole Bishop and Demar Hamlin, offensive lineman Connor McGovern, defensive back Cam Lewis, defensive end Joey Bosa. A lot of good reports. There's been some video out there of what Joey Bosa is doing off to the side, doing some sprinting and some other things, and sounds like there's a lot of good momentum for, where he's at, and probably not a very severe calf injury based on what he's already able to do. Linebackers Balin Spector and Shaq Thompson, running back Ty Johnson, receivers Laviska Shenault and KJ Hamler. I spoiled what I was trying to get to. Laviska Shenault, a non-participant, and offensive lineman Alec Anderson. That according to Sal Capaccio of WGR 550. He tweeted out that you can add offensive lineman Alec Anderson and receiver Laviska Shenault to the list of non-participants. So you don't love to see that list growing. And those are players. Every one of these guys can use the reps. I don't have to sit here and sell you on how important it is for the guys to be out there and doing their thing. But, obviously guys that are trying to carve out a role and prove themselves like a Laviska Shenault, needs every rep he can get. And so that's obviously not helpful. Another big injury note. This report courtesy of Joe Biscaglia, but a lot of Bills beat reporters shared this. But I'll read you a tweet from Joe Biscaglia of The Athletic. He said, near the end of Bills minicamp practice, rookie cornerback Maxwell Hairston suffered an injury and was getting checked on by athletic trainers. It appears to be an injury to his left leg. He did not go through any post-practice DB drills, but stood there watching with his helmet on. Not something you love to hear, obviously. I think it's good that he stayed on the field with his helmet on, right? If it was something that needed big attention, he's going to go inside and you're not going to see him again. So I think that's a good sign, but obviously you don't love hearing that. It remains to be seen if the Bills are going to practice on Thursday. You've seen Sean McDermott typically cancel that last practice. It's very common across the league. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. I mean, he's got a lot of young players on defense. Certainly Josh Allen and getting more reps with his receivers is never a bad thing. So I'm not sure what Sean McDermott's going to do, but we'll get more clarity on Maxwell Hairston tomorrow if the Bills practice. If not, then we're not going to hear anything else about it. So file that under something to monitor in addition to Alec Anderson and Laviska Shenault, plus the other list of the non-participants. And again, Sean McDermott shared with us pretty explicitly that, none of this appears to be stuff that's going to linger into training camp, and they're being extra cautious this time of year to make sure they get ahead of things and don't have nagging things that compile throughout the course of the season. So definitely a intelligently cautious approach with injuries this time of year. All right, on the other side of it, I want to get into some of the practice nuggets, a lot of those rooted in Josh Allen and his receivers. So we'll talk about that here on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with me. The NBA playoffs, the NBA finals in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And folks, I've been having fun building those parlays for these finals games. In addition to the Stanley Cup, the Panthers and Oilers, they're going. I've been getting in on some Sam Bennett overs. Been betting the over on the goals. There's been a lot of scoring already in these finals, and baseball as well, where there's opportunities to build parlays with who you think is going to get a hit, who's going to get a couple of total bases, all kinds of fun stuff. It's making these sports that I don't generally like as much. I'm a big football guy, but I'm paying attention more to hockey, baseball, and basketball because of the fun over at FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place that first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy-to-see place. And folks, I got 2 young kids at home. My wife and I were constantly running around doing different things with them. The Skylight calendar helps keep us organized, and I love being able to look at the entire week clearly on that 15-inch beautiful HD screen. It keeps our family organized. It makes us feel less overwhelmed. And I know my wife really appreciates not having to consistently remind me about all the different things that are going on. I can just look right at the calendar. So check it out, folks. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's skylightcal.com/NFL. All right, folks, let's continue talking about the latest practice reports coming out of mandatory minicamp. And I actually want to go back to the Tuesday practice where Josh Allen threw 3 interceptions. And I think most people can contextualize how much that does and does not matter. It's a minicamp practice. And the intent of minicamp is to work on stuff, right? To try out your concepts and then, build what you want to do going into training camp in terms of your schemes offensively and defensively. And Josh Allen said as much that that's what they're focused on. And, you're trying to work on timing and chemistry with your receivers. And so I don't really care that Josh Allen threw 1, 2, 3, 7 interceptions. It's not important to me. But what is interesting is when you read some of the analysis that have come through from the beat reporters on those interceptions, it's kind of interesting to pull some of those nuggets out. And so on the one was on an overthrow to Dalton Kincaid that was intercepted by Derek Forrest. Matt Marino of the Shout Buffalo podcast and Syracuse.com, he said Forrest played a lot of snaps on Tuesday with second-year safety Cole Bishop and Demar Hamlin not available because of injury. And don't love hearing about an overthrow to Dalton Kincaid. Obviously, that was kind of an issue last year for Allen and Kincaid. But I think the major takeaway here is confirming what we speculated on, in that Derek Forrest is getting a lot of run. As we're disappointed that Cole Bishop is not available for these practices, and Demar Hamlin as well, it is a great opportunity for Derek Forrest. And, maybe he wouldn't get these reps otherwise. And he's an X factor to me. I don't know if he's going to make this team. I hope he does. He's a player that I loved at Cincinnati. I really liked him at Washington. He had a season as a starter and then kind of got overlooked with the coaching switch. But I'm not sleeping on Derek Forrest, I'll tell you that. And he's got size, he's got athleticism, he's got ball skills, he's physical, and just kind of feels like could be the next Sean McDermott success story of safety development. And, think about guys like Quentin Michael or Kurt Coleman or Mike Mitchell or Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, these guys that really didn't have much going for them in their careers. Sean McDermott gets his hands on them and they become meaningful players, and in some cases, really high level players. And so I'm excited for Derek Forrest. And I think the range of outcomes for his 1 year in Buffalo could go from doesn't make the team to maybe has a role in sub packages to, oh my goodness, this is a top 2 safety on this team and he should start. And Sean McDermott's been pretty candid. Like, everything's earned. Playing time is earned. We want it to be Cole Bishop, but it doesn't have to be Cole Bishop. If Derek Forrest is better, let him play. And he's getting an opportunity right now to get his feet wet. And we'll see how it shakes out during training camp. The other interception, Joe Andreessen broke up a pass or intercepted a pass intended for Josh Palmer. And it sounds like Joe Andreessen's made a couple of good plays in coverage, which is great. I thought it was pretty easy to understand that Joe Andreessen has a good feel for playing downhill. He can take on blocks, he can tackle, he can sniff out the run, but what kind of coverage player is he? And I'm not saying he's good or bad. It's just I need to learn that based on my exposures to him. And seems like he's made some good plays in coverage. I loved some of the quotes from him after practice about, the different plays that are expected of a Mike Backer in this defense. And, with Balin Spector out and Shaq Thompson, still coming back from an Achilles, he's getting some very meaningful reps behind Terrell Bernard as the Bills' second team Mike linebacker right now. The other interception on Tuesday was targeting Palmer, who was covered by Christian Benford. And Matt Marino in his recap article said this, quote, "Benford was a problem all day for Buffalo's offense. He makes things challenging for every receiver that he faces." If you read Joe Buscalia's practice recap on The Athletic, he also offered some very high praise for Christian Benford, which, I mean, that's just what he is. He's Perino's line of he makes things challenging for every receiver he faces, and that's Christian Benford. Playing corner in the NFL, you're going to give up a play here and there, right? You got a receiver and a quarterback that know where they're going, right? You're going to give up some plays. But Benford, the way he competes and strains is really special. And it sounds like he's had a good offseason to this point. And I've listened to a lot of his interviews, or not a lot. I've listened to all of his interviews, which have kind of ramped up since he signed the deal. And I was hopeful that would happen because we haven't really gotten much of a chance to listen to him talk and get a feel for his personality. And we've certainly gotten that. And Benford just is so dialed in. He's so focused. I think that he's got such great habits based on the way he talks and the way that you hear McDermott and other players talk about him. And I have a lot of confidence in Christian Benford performing to the level expected of his contract and probably exceeding it. I just hope that we don't get to another situation where the Bills are playing a playoff game and he's not available, which has been the case the last 2 years when the Bills have been eliminated, whether it was the concussion early in the AFC Championship game and then last year against Kansas City. When I say last year, I mean 2023. He was injured as well. So stay healthy, young man. We know what you can do. A couple of other notes here on Josh Allen and his receivers. And, you look at these mandatory minicamp practices or really any offseason practice, feels like a lot of the nuggets that you get are rooted in wide receivers. And I understand it. It's like the most it's the most straightforward thing to assess. It's not full contact. So what are you really going to say about running backs or offensive linemen, defensive linemen, linebackers? It's the passing game that's going to be the most easy to identify what's going on and who's performing well. So it's always focused a lot on this time of year, but I understand it. We'll start with, there's some good and bad. We'll start with the bad. It sounds like Tyrell Shavers is having some struggles, which he was kind of a hot name last offseason. Didn't ultimately make the roster, got called up to the practice squad a few times. But Joe Buscalia, Matt Marino both had commentary on some Shaver struggles. Feels like drops have been the main issue. And the thing about Shavers and this wide receiver depth chart is you have like a perceived top five, and I think most people would tell you it's Khalil Shakir, Josh Palmer, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore. Like that's your top five. And the Bills, I think their number that they want to roster at receiver is 5. The challenging thing here when you look at that group is none of them really profile to helping on special teams. And really your 4th and 5th receiver ideally can help you on special teams. And that's just not the makeup of this room. And so that's where you kind of can look at Tyrell Shavers and think, maybe there's a chance. Look at a guy like Jalen Virgil, Caden Prather, the Bills' 7th round pick out of Maryland, the receiver, even Laviska Shenault. You think, well, if they really need a special teams benefit on their depth receivers, maybe there's a path for one of these guys, but we'll see, right? I think they have to perform well enough. And I think one of the most fascinating layers to this roster construction process for the Bills right now, as we have 91 players and it's going to get down to 53, is how do they come about building this roster with special teams in mind, because I continue to look at different places on this roster, and there's not a lot of proven special teams pedigree. You used to be able to look at this roster and think, okay, there's Tywan Jones, there's Tyler Matakevich, there's Daryl Johnson, there's, insert whatever player. The Bills have been very intentional. Saran Neal, so many different guys that have been, okay, why they're here. How do they get to their core special teamers? I think Reggie Gilliam is one of them. But even Quentin Morris played all the phases of special teams. He's not there. So now you're kind of projecting Jackson Hawes into it. None of your receivers make much sense. Ty Johnson's probably going to have a bigger role there. Your depth at corner, but if Trey White's one of your depth corners, he's probably an inactive player. What does that mean for, is Jordan Hancock as a rookie? Is he ready to go? Obviously, Andreessen, Edifwan Ulofoshio will be relied upon there, but I'm really fascinated to see how this special teams comes together, especially when you're looking at certain places where typically you can find the special teams answers, and they're not abundantly clear to me. And so that's going to be something to keep in mind as this process plays out. Now, the good news with wide receivers is you're continuing to hear really good things about Josh Allen's developing connection with Josh Palmer and Elijah Moore, which was as a big deal last year. I know that not specifically with those players, but Josh Allen developing chemistry with new players and players that were counting on expanding their roles year over year. And for some that worked out, for some it didn't. But it feels like mostly the reports that we're getting are positive about how Josh Palmer and Elijah Moore are fitting in, which is really not much of a surprise to me, because I think those are stylistically the types of receivers that Josh Allen has had success throwing the ball to. He likes route runners and separators. Think about any meaningful receiver that Josh Allen's had. John Brown, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Stephon Diggs, Khalil Shakir, route runners and separators. Now, Gabe Davis was a meaningful receiver, but he was more of a size, ball skills down the field, things get off script, throw it to him, design RPO type targets, which I think Keon Coleman can do. But I like the makeup of this room so much more right now than I did last year, this receiver room, because you do have guys that can separate. And to me, I've always thought to myself, playing receiver in its most simple form is get open and catch the football. Well, you can't catch a football until you get open. How do you get open? You create space. So you got to be able to create space. And I think the Bills did a good job of finding Palmer and more that can do that. To give you some quotes here, these are courtesy of Alex Brasky, Batavia Daily News. His podcast is right here, right now. You should check all of that out. His Twitter account is at Alex Brasky. He said Allen and Moore connected 3 times throughout team drills, including once during 7-on-7 when Allen lofted a beautifully thrown ball over the top, with Moore beating Tre'Davious White by a step and securing a lengthy completion. He said Allen and Palmer hooked up twice during team drills, including once during 7-on-7 on an out route versus Tre'Davious White after Palmer created the separation necessary for the reception. And so I'm really excited to see how this receiver core plays out. I think I know who the players that will make this team are going to be, but how big of a target share do they get? It's a really fascinating conversation. And I think for so many of these guys, you could sell me on 70 to 100 targets. You could sell me on 50 to 70. You could sell me on 30 to 50. I'd probably believe you. And of course, the way that that's going to sort itself out is the chemistry development, and then what happens. Like when Josh Allen gives guys chances to make plays, what do they do? What do they do? And if the answer is it works out, well, they're going to continue to get more and more opportunity. So I'm pretty fascinated to see this come together, and maybe we'll get another practice on Thursday. Maybe the next time we get our eyes on this football team, it'll be during training camp. But we'll be covering it every step of the way here for you. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. Look forward to catching up with you again real soon.